Alright, so welcome back everybody. So for this video, I'm going to try to teach you guys how to play Unsettled. I say try because this is a big game. It's not an extremely long game, but it took me like 5 hours to kind of go over most of the rules. So I'm going to try to teach you guys everything you need to know in order to play your first game. Now there's some rules that if I teach you certain rules, it will spoil things potentially for you. So I'm going to try to make this as spoil-free as possible. Normally, when you play the game, you'll play with a particular planet scenario. And that particular planet scenario will have a setup for you to follow. As you can see, I don't have it set up as far as a scenario is concerned. So we'll try to make this as spoil-free as possible. So let me first talk about some of the actions that you can take. There's several different actions in this game. Most of the actions that you'll be doing are going to be using these cubes here. I say cubes because 99% of the time you will not roll these. So they're cubes, they're focus cubes, not focus dice, focus cubes. There was one card in the game that I experienced that actually had me roll these, but just one. So that's why I say 99% of the time, you're not gonna be rolling these. So there's actions you can take with these. We'll talk about them momentarily. First, I wanna talk about some of the actions that you can take that don't include those focus cubes. One of the actions you can take when it's your turn is you can move Luna, this floating orb machine. You can move her one space, one node, okay? And so moving from here to here is moving from one node, or should I say the scarab, to a location, an area known as a node. Now, she's useful because she can ignore things. So when you move her into an area, you don't know what to expect with the area, right? And so sometimes it's better to have something that is unaffected by planet affairs, planet issues to go first to kind of scout ahead. So this is an action you can take every round. So we can uncover something using her. So that's what we're doing. We're gonna move her here, and this is the area that's been revealed. And that's a glowing lichen cave, okay? Now, you'll notice that this is a symbol here, an icon, right? There's another one that's exactly the same here. This one doesn't have it, but this has a different type of icon. When you move Luna into a node, into an area that passes through one of these icons here, she's unaffected by it, okay? So she is unaffected by doing that. So that's one of the actions you can take on your turn, is basically moving her one spot. Now, another thing that Luna can do is she can scan that node, that area, for resources. Now, there are two types of resources that you can scan for. You can scan for these green materials, or you can scan for these blue data cubes, okay? So one or the other. So you can choose one to scan for. So you can say, hey, I want to scan for green materials. So what you'll do is you'll roll this green dice, and we just rolled a 1. So that means we put one material on that node, okay? That's one action you can take every time. You can only do it once per turn, but that's one of the things you can do. Now, the next time you want to scan for something on the same node, you cannot scan for something that's already available. So I cannot get any more green materials here until we take another action later down the road that basically allows us to gather the materials from this location. So the only other thing we could roll for was, on a future turn, we could roll for these blue data cubes. So, that's one of the things you can do. You can move her, and then you can scan for resources, okay? Both actions exclude these focus cubes. So that's two potential actions you can take on your turn, okay? Now, another action you can take is just simply moving. Every turn you have an optional, this is optional. The first two actions are optional. This third action is also optional. An optional action is you can move. So we could move this character from here to there. That's one action you can take that's optional. Now, whenever you move from a node to another node, you have to take into account the effects of doing so. So this icon here is a time icon. So we're affected by that. That means we have to pay one time resource from here to here. That means if there were 3 of those icons, the time resource icons, we would have to pay 3 time resources by moving from one location to another. Of course, some locations will be blank, and maybe the next card down the road would be blank too, and then we weren't affected by that. Sometimes when we move into a node, there's an area of effect. This card does not have an area of effect. So when we move here, besides losing one time, so we have a tray here, okay? Let me move it so you guys can see it, all right? So we have a tray here. This is our time resource. So by moving from here to here, we do have to move this up by 1, okay? Now, what happens when this time resource reaches this location here? Well, the next time you need to pay a time resource, it is going to go around the bend, and you'll see it has this icon here, this red one that you can barely see. So let me show you guys. If you see that red icon, it means you lose 1 endurance. It even has an E. Doesn't it look like an E? Yes, it's an E. So when you see a red E with an arrow going down, that icon indicates that you've lost an endurance, okay? So every time that time resource has to make a rotation from the end to the start, it's going to go through that. And then on a player's, basically player board here, you're going to move this clear cube down a slot. And this is basically the endurance track. So when that clear cube goes all the way down to the red spot, then, well, you're very, very, very unconscious. That means you can't do anything, okay? And if every player goes down to red, then you lose the game. Now, when this time cube goes all the way around the bend and comes back, it's not just the player's turn that it affects all players. So all players have to move this cube down 1 on the endurance track. It's not just the player who's taking the turn, all players are affected by that. But there are some other things that can happen to you that can cause this clear cube to go down further, and so that's why somebody might be unconscious before other players. Okay, so that's something that will happen. When you move from there to there, it's affecting time, and obviously time is a precious resource, so you only have so many turns in this game before it's game over, okay? So that's 3 of the actions you can take. Remember, moving is optional, moving Luna is optional, and scanning for resources is optional. The next several actions are not optional. Actions using your focus cubes are not optional. You must use them on your turn for something in order to end your turn, okay? So you'll notice there are certain things on here. So this green icon you see is a wonder focus cube. This red one is an energy focus cube, and this one is an awareness focus cube, okay? Certain things, certain actions you can take will give you benefits if you put a certain type of focus cube on it. So for instance, this is one of the actions that you can take on your turn. You'll notice it has the energy icon on it, but I am not required to put said red cube on that spot. If I wanted to, I could put the blue one there, and that's fine, and take that action with the blue one. I just don't get this benefit, okay? But if I do put the red one on this location, then I'm going to get this benefit in addition to taking the action, okay? So this is the action, this is the benefit if you use a particular cube, okay? Now this icon here is actually on your player board right here. You'll notice it says Insight. So whenever you see that icon, which is there, and you get to do it because you put the certain cube at that location, then what's going to happen is it's going to cause this little cube on the track to go up every time you gain 1 insight. Now, you get to choose at the start of the game what type of insight or comprehension you're working towards. This green one is a chemistry comprehension. The red one is a, what's the red one again? Hold on. Is an engineering, it's an engineering, this red one is an engineering comprehension, basically. And then the blue one is a robotics, okay? A robotics comprehension, basically. Okay? So that's what you're working towards. So if I was going to go with the green one, I'm working towards a chemistry comprehension. Now, whenever I gain insight, and my insight cube on the track is there, and I'm supposed to gain another insight, this is going to go around the bend, similar to the time resource, and it's going to go basically into here and go down, and then you're going to get to add one comprehension, okay? So we have comprehension. So one comprehension to this location here. And so then I would gain this green chemistry comprehension, and I'd get to put it onto my little track here, meaning I can only have 4 at most. But then the next time it goes around, I can change it to another color if I want to. So I could work on robotics next time, for instance. As a for instance. Then, now why would you need comprehension? Well, certain tasks in this game require comprehension, or give you a benefit if you have a particular comprehension in some sort of science, like chemistry, robotics, engineering, obviously. That would be the case for that equation for comprehension. Sometimes, you know, if you want to fix a ship, that requires engineering, wouldn't it? If you want to do something with Luna, a special action with Luna or something like that, that might require some comprehension in robotics. For instance, if you need to heal somebody because they've been poisoned or something, that might require some sort of chemistry comprehension to do those set actions. And so that's why you're going to want comprehension and stuff. Everyone's going to obviously want something, and if you're in a team game, obviously this is a team game, a co-op game, you kind of want to work so that way everyone is well-rounded. So that way it makes sense for someone to be a specialist in robotics and somebody else to be a specialist in engineering and chemistry. You know, you kind of want to make sure everyone's doing something different depending on how many people are playing the game, and try to make sure you have that there's somebody in your team that has a comprehension in something. Now, when that goes around, it will refresh, like I said, and come back here, and then you can work towards your next comprehension. Now, if something happens in the game and you want to work towards a different type of comprehension, you are allowed to change your mind and switch to another comprehension. But when you do that, it's going to cause your cube to go all the way back to start. So it's better to just let it continue and finish before you change to the next one, because it might be a waste. It might be considered a waste if you do that, but who knows? With this game, you just never know what would be the best idea or solution. But that's an option I thought I'd mention that you can do. Now, another thing you're going to get when you get a comprehension token for your player board, you're also going to get one of these breakthroughs. You're going to have a breakthrough card for that particular comprehension. So here's chemistry, for instance. And these cards give you abilities. Okay, you're going to want these because they give you abilities. And in fact, when I played my game by myself with, you know, trying the game out, there was one such breakthrough that was instrumental to my surviving. So, and at first I didn't think it was going to be super helpful, but at the end of the game, it was super helpful. So don't take these cards for granted, but they're going to give you abilities. Usually they're going to require some type of resource that you're going to have to pay in order to use the said action. So for instance, in order to do this action here, I would first have to pay a material. That means I'd have to have a material already gathered. That material, if it was here, just on a node, that's not a material we have because we haven't taken the action to unearth said materials and put them into a little collective location. But yes, I would need to pay a resource to use this card. But I'm able to use it once per turn. If I wanted to, I could use this awesome ability once per turn. What it does not matter right now. I'll let you kind of discover the abilities as you get them on your own, because they are planet specific and they are different for each planet. So that's something to note. But yes, that's something you can do and something you can get if you are trying to gain insight, okay? So, let me talk about these focus cubes in more detail now. So, when you start the game off, you need to make sure that you keep these focus cubes exactly as they're supposed to be. They'll start on the 2 node, okay? On these 2, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to have them facing you with the 3s on the sides like this, okay? That has to be for sure, for everybody. If you're looking at the cubes like this, and it's exactly like this at the start of the game, you're good. But you want to make sure that the 3s are always going to be facing you, and the 1s are going to be facing away from you, that you can't see them, with the 2s on top. Now, when you take an action, so let me just demonstrate what could happen. If I was to take this traverse action, let's not talk about what it does, but you'll notice it has a little arrow on it going down, okay? Whenever you put a focus cube on one of these action slots that has an arrow going down, then you have to basically rotate your dice going down like that, okay? Now, you can still take an action even if your focus is only 1. But if I was to take this action later and my red focus cube is only 1, I could still do that, and it would cause it to go down to here. Now you'll notice that is the time icon. So if I ever use this cube when it's already like this on a time icon, I can still use it to take an action, so I could use it to still take the traverse action. But if I did, I would have to move my time resource up by 1, which would be a problem. You would be wasting time doing that. So you're probably thinking, well, how do I get that number to go up? Well, there's a lot of different ways. Some events could happen that could cause it to go up. But the 2 main ways are these 2 actions here, the rest action and the recover action. Now, on your turn, you always have to take a rest action, okay? So one of these cubes has to be for the rest action, okay? So you have to take that action first. Or last, I should say. But it has to be one of these focus cubes. So, for instance, if I had something this close to the bottom, I would need to raise it, obviously. And you'll notice the rest action, its arrow is going up. So, I could then rotate it up by 1 when I take the rest action. So that's one of the ways that you're going to increase your cubes. Going up. There are some abilities that you could get and stuff like that could help with that as well. There's certain places that you could, some nodes, some areas that you could go to that could, for instance, obviously let you increase your focus cube up more at some other locations. But this is one of the main ways you're going to do that, is the rest action. Now, another thing you could do is you could take a recover action. Now, this action here is a must. This action is not a must. So this is an optional action. This is an action you have to take, okay? So you have lots of different actions here, but this is an optional action, okay? Now, you'll notice it also has the time action here anyway. So even though I have to take this action, okay, and I'm using it to increase my focus cube by 1, doing so, it's also going to affect the time resource. So that's another way that time will move up on the track. And so, regardless of what you do in your turn, it's going to cause this to go up. It's going to cause it to go up by at least 1 per turn, but potentially 2 if you're moving from one place to another, potentially more than 2 per turn. And so you see, even after just a couple of turns, this could go all the way around and already cause your endurance to go down by 1 after just a couple of turns. That's quite possible. So you're running out of time pretty fast, okay? But that's something you can do. So that's one of the actions you have to take on your turn. Okay, so what's the point of this action? Well, like I said, if your focus cube was pretty low and you put it here, you can increase it by 1, 2, and 3. 3 is the max, okay? So that's one way to basically get all of your focus back on a particular focus cube. But this icon here, it affects another section of the board. It affects this here. So normally, this is your group trust token, okay? And so when trust is good, all sorts of good things happen. But when trust is bad, it changes the game, okay? So that's something to note. When trust goes down, you'll notice it has two little red arrows. So if you take the recover action, it's going to cause your group trust to go down, and one of the negative effects it's going to have on your team is everybody has to lower their focus cubes by 2. 2. That means that they could do it on just 1 cube. They could go down by 2 on just 1, like so. Or they could do 1 and 1, for instance. So that's basically how that's going to do it. So that's one of the things that's going to happen to you if low trust is going down, okay? But another thing it's going to affect is the type of actions that you can take. Every player gets to start with 2 of these types of actions, and they get to choose one to put onto their player board. What it's going to do is it's going to basically change one of the potential actions you can take. So for instance, at the beginning of the game, if I had chosen to take the intellectual here, you'll notice it says rest, which means it goes on my rest action at the beginning of the game. So whenever I take the rest action, if I was to put this blue cube here, I'd get to not only increase it by 1, but I'd get 1 insight moving up on the insight track. So that's something I could do in a beneficial thing I could do to increase my insight. That's there's obviously other ways to do it too, but this would be a nice way of doing it. So that's one of the potential things that would happen. However, not only when group trust is low, as in it gets put down because somebody decided to take a recover action or something happened and it just caused group trust to go down, because there's several planned events that could do it. What's going to happen is it's going to affect this action slot here, okay? It's going to make it go to the black side, which then changes the action. So now this instead is going to cover my recover action instead of my rest action. So now I've got a different action if my group trust is low. But maybe the effect is better. It doesn't necessarily mean it's extremely bad, because everybody reacts to bad things in different ways. Sometimes it can be a negative thing, and sometimes it can even be a positive thing. But that's something that could potentially happen if I was to take the recover action. I would obviously also affect other players, because it would change what types of actions that they could potentially take. It would change that. It would also cause all of the other players to also still do this, where they have to lower something by 2 or lower 2 by 1, you know, two pips basically, okay? So that's another problem, of course. Where was I? Okay, there we go. So those are the 2 actions that you can take here. So obviously rest is a must, and we've explained this one as well. So what are the other 4 actions you can take on your player board? Well, there's the support action here. Now, in order to explain the support action, I should mention that there are certain things that will cause you distress. Certain events in this game, depending on what planet you are, that will give you a distress card. So you'll notice this icon here on the above distress. Okay, when you get a distress card, it actually has to cover one of your actions, okay? So, for instance, let me grab this. So, for instance, I could cover this if I want. I couldn't cover this because when you have to cover one of your action slots, you cannot cover the rest action, because the rest action is always a must-have action. But I could cover one of the other 5 of my choice, okay? I could cover one of them with the distress card, okay? So basically, getting a lot of distress cards limits the actions that you can take on your turn. And you're probably wondering, if I have 3 focus cubes, how am I supposed to take the other actions if this is the only one I have left? Well, there are actions that you can take elsewhere with the focus cubes. But yes, that's one of the things that's going to cause that to happen. Now, if you have to take a distress card, and there are no more distress cards to take, well, it's going to be another problem, because what it's going to do is it's going to cause your endurance to go down by 1. So if there are no more distress cards to take because they've already all been taken, it's going to cause that to go down by 1, which could be bad. But it's only the person who has to draw the distress card that's going to cause this cube to go down. So it doesn't affect all players. It just affects that one player. So obviously you don't want too many distress cards because that's a problem. Now there are ways to get rid of distress cards, and that's why we're going to talk about the support action next. You'll notice the support action here has that exact icon that the distress card has. And you'll notice it has something below that. It has a minus sign, meaning you get to remove a distress card from another player. When you take the support action, you cannot take this off of your player board. You'd have to take it off of somebody else's player board. But you'd get to take one off of your choice off of their player board. So that's something. So, and then by doing that, by supporting that player, you are increasing group trust. So then group trust would go back up because you've supported your friend who was in need, who was in dire stress. And that means it's going to affect your focus cubes again. It's going to cause them to go up, 2 of them, up by 1, or obviously 1 up by 2, for instance, okay? But yeah, that's what's going to happen when you get to increase group trust. So that's another benefit for taking this action. Of course, whatever cube you put here still has to go down by 1 because of the arrow. So that's 3 of the actions you can take. Another action you can take is the traverse action. When you take the traverse action, you basically get to move your character from one node to another. So it's another way of moving. So potentially on your turn, you could potentially move 2 times if you were to put your dice here. That's another potential thing you could do, okay? And of course, it's going to decrease your pip by 1 by doing so. And if you put the red one here, well, then your insight's going to go up. So that's another benefit for putting the red energy cube, focus cube, on traverse. You might increase your insight some more, and you get to move your character from one node to another. So 2 movement at most per turn, unless you've got a card that says otherwise. Another action you can take is the theorize action. What that means is you get to basically theorize with another explorer playing the game, and they get to increase their insight, okay, up by 1. Not you. They get to increase their insight by 1. But if you put your awareness cube here instead of another cube, then that means it's going to also increase your insight by 1. So then you and another player get to increase your insight by 1 each, which is awesome. So that's another action you can take. Then there's the investigate action, okay? All right, so if you take the investigate action, and it's obviously going to cause this to go down by 1 because there's an arrow on it going down as well. When you take this action, it's going to allow you to investigate something on the node you're located on. So you will first draw one of these cylinders here, and you're going to put it on the card, okay? And you're going to draw an opportunity card, okay? And then you read what it says, and then you're going to put this particular suction tentacle, if this is the card you drew, and then you've been engaged. And so when you enter a node, so if you're in this node here and you decide to move to another node and you've got this suction tentacle creature on you, then it's going to cause this to happen. It's going to cause one of your pips on one of your focus cubes to go down by 1, but it's also going to give you a material as well. So you'll get to grab a material and add it to your inventory, okay? So here's my inventory, for instance. Let me just focus over there. See? So now I'd get a material from here to here. So that's another way you could potentially get a material, is certain cards could give you that as well. So that's something you can do. But then you're probably wondering, how do I get this thing off of me? Well, another player is going to have to, because you're going to leave this somewhere on the table, and another player is going to have to put their focus cube when it's their turn, okay? And they're going to have to put it down, and then they get to basically remove it for you. They will get this tentacle creature for their own inventory, basically. They'll get 1 insight if they put down that particular cube on this location, and then what it's going to do is it's going to give you that particular item, which is this creature here, and it's going to give you an anomaly card as well. And then the anomaly card is going to give you an awesome ability that you could do just one time, but you can do it when you want to do it. So this means you discard this and you lose one of your pips by taking this action. And this is a free action. So if I have this and it's another player's turn, I can use this on their turn. There's lots of free actions that you can take on your opponent's turn, especially if you have tons of these types of cards or tons of breakthrough cards or something like that. But yes, you could do this. Now, I'm not going to explain what this does, but you could do this. But it does mean if you were to do this, you would have to have a comprehension in engineering to do this. That means somebody nearby on the same node as you has to have engineering, or you have to have engineering in order to perform this action. And then you discard the card and the creature as well. So that's something you could do with Investigate. You're going to get potentially an ability, a one-time use ability if you did do this. But you're only allowed to do this on one node only one node each. So you'll have this investigation token. So when you take the investigate action, you will put this token here to confirm that you've already done the investigate action here. So that's all of the actions that you could potentially take on your player board. Okay? Now, there's still some more actions you can take. So let me grab this. Okay, so another type of action you can take on your turn is you can build a workshop, a laboratory, or a research hut. One thing you're going to require, though, is you're going to need a spot to build said place. So some of these nodes, these areas, will have these cog wheels on them. That means that's an area you can build one of the three types of basically buildings you can build. Now, it's an action that requires a focus cube, so you're going to have to use a focus cube to obviously take this action, or that one, but it'll allow you to build it. But if you don't have the comprehension in engineering, then if you decide to build the workshop, it's going to take one of your time away instead, which could be bad. If you don't have comprehension in chemistry and you build the laboratory, then it'll cause you to lose one time. And if you don't have comprehension in robotics for the research hut, then it'll cost you to lose one time. But then these give you abilities, okay? The workshop here will allow you to move Luna anywhere, okay? She can move one space anywhere, as long as you have these types of resources. So these orange discs, okay? As long as you have them, you get to use her ability, okay? And so you start with none. You don't start with any of these. But there are certain things you can do. There's a type of action that will actually allow you to get this resource. And we'll talk about it momentarily. But that's one of the things that you could do. If you build the laboratory, you can pay one material, if you have it, to increase one pip on a dice. Pretty simple. If you have the research hut, you can pay one data cube to increase your insight by one. And you can do these actions as many times as you want, as long as you have the resources to pay for them. So I could move Luna 6 times on the same turn if I had the resources to do it, for instance, as an example. So that's another action you can take. Now, there's another action here that she has for this particular planet, and it will basically allow you to remove one distress card if you have an explorer next to Luna to do this action. But it's going to cause your cube, your logic cube, to go down by 2 if you do that. So that's another potential action you can take. Okay, 3 more actions to talk about. 3 more. So you can put your data cubes to take these actions, okay? So if I was to take my awareness cube, okay, and take this action, and obviously cause that to go down by 1, it's going to allow me to charge power. So I can basically move this from here to there. Now, if I put the energy one down here, okay, if I put the energy one down here and it goes like this, for instance, I'd get to charge 2 instead of 1, for instance. So if I had done that, I would have 2 instead. So there's obviously some benefits to using the same color for these locations, okay? If I want to unearth materials, I would first have to be on a node that has materials. So if there were, for instance, 2 materials on that area, and I was the green player, and I decided to put my, where's my cube? Oh, here it is. If I decided to put my focus cube here and take this action, I could basically take 2 materials from the planet, because Luna scanned for them earlier, and I could unearth them and put them into our inventory. This is a shared inventory, so all players have access to this shared inventory, but that's something you could do. If I take this action, the analyze data, one thing to note is Luna has to be at this location. So Luna has to be on this location, okay? There also has to be some data cubes present. So there'd have to be, like, for instance, 2 data cubes there, or 1, for you to take the analyze data action. And if you used your awareness, okay, if you used your awareness and took this action, you'd get to take 2 from the planet and put them into your inventory, okay? So those are the 3 actions you can take there. So there's lots of different actions you can take besides what's on your player board. Let me think, what else is there to talk about? Okay, let me just breathe for a second. So I've talked about pretty much all of the basic actions that you need to know in order to play the game. Let me think. There are certain environment cards. Let me find one. Let's see. Hold on. Okay. Let me find one that's negative, actually. Sometimes when you enter an area, if I was to ever enter this area here, this type of node, it says when you enter here, if you do not possess fungal host, there are certain all the hallucination cards have fungal host. So if you have a hallucination card, because you have 2 distress cards, you actually draw a hallucination card. I guess I didn't explain that, huh? So whenever you have 2 of these, okay, on your player board, when you get 2, you have to draw a hallucination card. These hallucination cards can have some beneficial effects. They can also have some negative effects as well. But I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't show you what any of these do. But if you have 2 of them, all of these hallucinations give you a fungal host, okay? So if you have a fungal host, if you don't have a fungal host, you have to take a distress card. So if I didn't have a hallucination card or another card that gave me fungal host, I'd have to take another distress card and put it on my player board, okay? Ouch. So if you want to avoid that, you might want to have hallucination or something like that, right? But yeah, that's a possibility of something that could potentially happen. Okay. Okay, so then let me explain something else. So, in order to win the game, you're going to have these survival tasks, okay? And it's going to give you one to do, all right? And when you complete a survival task, the card will tell you to move to the next one. This is sort of like a book. And it's going to give you another survival task. And then after you solve that task, it's going to give you another one, potentially. And then you all have to try to make it back to the ship. So there might be more than a few tasks, but once you finish all your tasks, if the card says now you need to make it back to your ship, not only do you have to have both players on the Scarab at the end of the game, but you also need to have Luna as well. The only way to win this game is to solve all of the tasks per planet, and also have everyone make it back to the ship to survive. Now, if you run out of time, meaning if everyone's endurance is 0 before you can make it back to the ship, even if you manage to get all of your tasks completed, and all you had to do was make it back to the ship, but you all ran out of time, and your endurance went down to 0 on everybody, you still lose. So you need to make sure everybody else makes it back, including Luna, okay? So that's another thing to mention. That's the only way you can win. You have to complete all of the tasks you're given for the scenario, for the planet you're on, and then you all have to make it back alive, including Luna. okay? Let me just mention there's one other thing I want to mention. So, something you might need to know for your first game. When you're on Winora, there's something that's going on Winora that's going to affect everybody, okay? These toxic spore clouds that are going to be on the planet, okay? So, they're going to always be present on the planet. So, let's say I'm in this node here, okay? And I want to move to a new area, okay? Let's say red is here too, and I'm here, and I want to move from here to here. What's going to happen is when I do that, take that action, it's going to cause a toxic spore to form, and that spore is going to be released into this area here. Now, what it's going to do is when a player starts their turn on a spot with a toxic spore on it, it's going to cause that player to receive a distress card. So this is going to happen a lot. So as you explore, which you have to do, you're going to cause toxic spores to form, and that means the other player who was on the other placer is going to be affected by it. So you might be thinking, maybe we should branch out and go 2 separate ways. But at some point, you're going to come to a point where you're going to have to go to a spot that has a toxic spore on it already, and then when you start your turn in that location, it's going to cause you to get these, okay? Now remember, these, while may limit what you can do, they give you those hallucination cards, and just because some of them are negative doesn't mean they are all negative, okay? So that's the thing. You just don't know. But I don't want to spoil too much more than that. I think that's pretty much everything you need to know in order to play your first game. There might be something I'm forgetting or missing, but I think that's everything you need to know in order to play your first game. Everything else, you're going to have to learn on your own as you explore new planets and scenarios, okay? There's going to be different things that happen. But if I explain anything more than that, it will probably start spoiling things for sure. Because you just don't know what's going to happen. So just test it out, see what happens. If you die, you can always play another game, because this game takes about only 2 hours to play. So if you lose, you should have enough time to play another game in the same day. So I hope this was enough to explain what you need to know in order to play the game. I hope it was enough. I hope it's enough for my friends especially. And I'll see you guys again next time. Have a nice day. Bye.